discussing innovation in the real estate industry. And today we are having an interesting topic, how to grow your business relying on admins and transaction coordinators. How to hire an admin, where to hire, how many hours you'd save, what are the challenges in hiring an admin or a transaction coordinator. My co-host is William Dickey today. Hi, Willie.
Hey, Natalia. Good to be here as always. So today we have two very special guests. We have Sarah Hofacker from OC Transaction Coordinators. Thanks for joining us, Sarah. And our newest property client, Deborah Osborne from SoCal Realty Group. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us, Deborah.
Thanks for having me.
So if you guys could both give yourselves just a brief intro, starting with you, Sarah, a little bit about your business and your background in real estate.
Sure. So I'm the owner of OC Transaction Coordinators, and I started in 2015. And so I do this full time, and I've grown just leaps and bounds since then. So very busy, and found property, I guess, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, maybe, I think. Yeah, so it's definitely been a lifesaver for me.
Awesome. Glad to hear we're helping. And Deborah, how about yourself?
So I've been a broker for a few years, just recently started my own company last year, because who doesn't start their own company in the middle of a pandemic, right? But long time realtor, 26 years, I guess, right around there. Managed small boutique brokerages to Coldwell Banker, large offices. But I found you guys through Sarah. Sarah's my fabulous TC. And so I'm grateful to her for introducing me to you guys, because I've used several other transaction management systems. But I'm excited to, I've learned a little bit about you through Sarah. So I'm excited to kind of implement that in my own brokerage with my agents, and excited to get started.
We were glad to hear that. And we were just talking about this before the call, that Sarah makes my job easier as a sales rep at property, because she sings our praises. So it makes it much easier when I then get on the phone with somebody who's worked with Sarah and has spoken to her beforehand.
Yep.
And Deborah, congrats with the launch.
Oh, thank you.
Crazy time for launching. Yeah, the market is booming, and I hope you have an amazing team already. And this is why we're here today, to actually learn how you set up your company, what were the first hires, and why TCs and admins are important to your business. So let's start with Sarah. Sarah, how many admins do you have? How many TCs do you have? And what do you recommend agents to do? Because I know maybe still don't have transaction coordinators, but it's such a lifesaver. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so, I always say that, there's a quote out there, and I'm not sure who said it, but just about, someone who's successful knows when to delegate. And if you look at the transaction and you look at what a real estate agent is responsible for, there are so many things that are administrative that goes into a deal once it's in escrow. And it's just smart to have someone else doing that for you when you're a real estate agent, so that you can be out there doing, making sure that you have a pipeline, talking to your clients, or, getting new clients and things like that. So I just think it's so important if you're going to manage everything efficiently. But I have one assistant, and I have a TC other than myself, and I'm also a full-time TC as well for the company, and I'm sure that will continue for a long time. And so I hope to get more. I'm just kind of trying to establish training in such a busy time. But yeah, so not really big as far as employees, but doing really well as far as transactions. It's just been this, I don't know what this pandemic has done, but it's definitely increased real estate in California anyway, exponentially.
And you operate in California, right?
Yes. So yeah, I live in New Mexico, and all of my clients are in California. So this job is something that's great because you can do it virtually. I don't have to be, in California or, even at home. As long as I have an internet connection, I can do this. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, actually, I have my question about admins abroad, but let's ask Deborah first. How did you find your first admin?
Oh gosh. Well, first I had an admin when I was managing the first office that I managed. It was a small boutique brokerage, and I have always been fortunate to be able to sell as well, because that's where my passion is selling and working with clients. So even when I was managing both small and larger brokerages, I was able to still, continue to work with clients. So I've had luxury and the I'm very grateful and fortunate to have been able to have admins both on the side of being the manager, but also being a pretty active agent. And I couldn't live without my, an assistant and a TC. Just can't. Like Sarah mentioned, when you're, really an active agent working with a lot of clients, I am pretty much 6 to 7 days out in the field showing properties. And so it's nice to know that you have other people kind of helping you with the back end, equally as important as people on the front end, like myself. I couldn't do it without them. So it's nice to know that emails are still getting returned throughout the day when I'm not at the computer, and business is still getting done. Documents are still getting signed. Clients are still being responded to. The other side of the transaction is still being responded to. So definitely very important part of the transaction are the admin and the TC.
Yeah, for sure. On our end, we have one of our first customers. When she joined Proppy, she had about $200,000 in revenue as her commissions. Then after 1 year, she hired a TC, and she was very hesitant whether she can delegate that. This fear, as Sarah, we discussed that on the prep call. Then she doubled this sales, almost doubled, 70% growth, 170% growth next year. And now she made $700,000. So more than 3x within 3 years. So the first thing she did is hiring a TC, transaction coordinator, and then part-time admin. And now she's onboarding this admin full-time. So we can see how this team actually allows the entire business to exponentially grow. Sarah, what you can speak to this fear, whether to have a TC or not have a TC? Because we have still a number of agents that are utilizing Proppy so that they can ease coordination for themselves, because they are so detailed oriented that they don't want to delegate this task. So they're using Proppy in order to make this life a little bit easy. And I hope they will listen to this webinar and be brave enough to delegate this job.
Yeah, so for starters, I completely understand the fear, because I have the same thing with my business. You start something and you work really hard, from the ground up to build something, and you do it a certain way, and you have your certain way that you do it, and it's hard to be confident that someone else is going to do it as good as you can do it, or that's how you feel anyway. So I do understand the fear. I do. And these are clients that you want to return to you, over time. So I think that the main thing is that, you really just have to do a lot of research before you go live with your admin or your TC, making sure that they have the skills, making sure that it's a good match. And then, it still takes a couple of transactions before things are smoothed out, but you become just this really great machine after that. And once you know each other and what to expect, it's just something where, it looks flawless when you're going through a transaction. You from the beginning, when you're first, opening up that deal, and, the emails are going out and everyone's introduced, and, and it just becomes something where you can look so professional and so, well put together. So I think that as much as I understand the fear, I think getting over the fear and seeing what the benefits are at least trying it. And, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think everyone should definitely give it a whirl, because I don't think I've ever had anyone say, I'll never use a transaction coordinator again after they've started to.
Yeah, right. Deborah, can you educate a little bit our audience, those who still didn't try, what are the range of the prices in California for a TC, for a file, or for a transaction? And what were the main 3 items that were important for you when you were looking for a TC?
Can I just take a step back for 1 second and add something about the admin that I didn't mention earlier? For anybody that's kind of a little bit reluctant or fearful, like you were just talking about, one way to kind of dip your toe in the water that's maybe a little less expensive way is to use, now I just blanked on it. What are they called? The ones that are virtual, like a virtual assistant?
Virtual assistant, yeah.
Yeah. So you can get pretty inexpensive virtual assistant help that can help with, like, your database management, when you're just trying to input contacts, or just little things like that, things that can take stuff off your plate to allow you to work, just devote more time to your clients. Obviously TCs are doing the contracts and that part of it. And to get to that question that you just asked, in California, well, I should let Sarah speak to this. I don't really want to. Is it okay to say what I pay, Sarah?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So Sarah is very reasonable, by the way, and she's just so amazing. I dare I say you could charge more. I don't want to say that because then you charge more. But anyway. So with Sarah, it's $350 per file, and she offers this amazing deal for. Should I say that soon? Sorry.
Sure, of course. No, it's fine. It's out there on my website.
Tell people it's $300 your first file, and then $350 thereafter. Worth every penny for sure, and more. So yeah, in California, it ranges from probably, I'd say, like $300 up. I've heard some people charging $450 for files, which, I don't know.
I've heard about $2,000 in San Francisco.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a bit.
Call Sarah.
I need to go from Orange County to, what did you say that
was? Yeah.
Okay, Deborah, and what are the 3 main things that were important for you for your brokerage?
3 main things as far as just anything?
Finding a transaction coordinator.
Oh, for coordinator.
Or a
okay.
virtual assistant, yeah.
So for me, it was really important because I've used all kinds of transaction coordinators before. A lot of transaction coordinators are actually licensed agents, and it's personal preference for everybody, and I get that. But for me, for some reason, I didn't really want to use someone that was a licensed agent that maybe does a little bit of business themselves, because for me, I felt like if I'm going to pay somebody that's a licensed agent and they're doing it on the side, then I should just be doing it on the side. I've been in this business 26 years. So for me, it was important to have somebody that was not a licensed real estate agent, but somebody that's, and some people want certified transaction coordinators. That's not as important for me in my brokerage. Is just knowing somebody that's been in the business for a long time and they definitely know the contracts inside and out. And not only that, but they stay on top of in California, I can only speak obviously for California, but in California, good Lord, every year we get something new. There's some new disclosure or some part, in fact, we're getting ready to have a major change in our residential purchase agreement, the contract, which they've now postponed till I think later this year. But I've seen a glimpse of that, and it's just completely going to be a whole new contract with a whole new look and feel. And anyway, so it's important to have a TC
about that too, about the new contract.
Yeah. So it's really important to have a TC that stays on top of that kind of stuff and stays up to date with those forms. We just had a new one that Sarah was already aware of before I even mentioned it. We have this new high fire density disclosure that just became effective January 1st. So, she already knew about that form and she was already implementing that in my transactions. So that's really important to have a TC that's on top of that stuff.
So Deborah, that beyond the TC role, which obviously there's a ton of value in that, and Sarah said something that resonated and it's come up numerous times on this webinar, is successful people know when to delegate, and we touched on it before. It's really tough for a lot of people to do. And, they're passionate about their brand. They want to maintain a reputation, and it's tough to kind of let go and trust other people to do certain things that are going to represent you and your name and your company. Your specialization is selling real estate. So the more time you can do that, the more successful you're going to be from a revenue generation standpoint. Beyond the TC role, what are other tasks that take up your time that could be better spent, selling real estate, getting new business, those types of things?
There's definitely a lot of things from an administrative perspective that can be taken off my plate. And that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier with, initially I started off with virtual assistants, and then now I have a friend that kind of helps me out part-time. She's a full-time mom, but doing this on the side a little bit for me. And so she takes a lot of stuff off my plate. She even helps me with some personal stuff sometimes. So all that kind of stuff, like you're saying, takes stuff off the plate to allow me to just be in front of the client, which is where I'm making money. If I'm not really in front of my clients, whether it's a seller or a buyer, I'm probably not, doing that. To me, I need to do income or revenue generating, activities. So.
And how was that process like from early on in your career to getting to the point where you were comfortable and understood that by offloading a lot of that, you'd be more productive? And I guess talk about that sort of transition where you sort of let go, and then also not only that, but sort of identified exactly what you needed help with to allow you to spend more time driving revenue.
So first of all, I did not do it as soon as I should have done it. It took a long time for me to finally realize, okay, yeah, this is probably something I need to do. You watch a lot of webinars and I attended a ton of conventions for a long time, especially being part of the Coldwell Banker brand. That was important to go to a lot of the nationwide conventions. So, you watch all these successful people talk about that stuff, but I think it was Sarah that said earlier, first it was Natalie. It is, you kind of do have a little bit of fear, and especially for somebody like me, admittedly, who's a little bit of a control freak. It's hard to delegate that, because I think it was Sarah that said, you think it's a false thought, but you think that nobody else is going to be able to do it as good as you. And we all, myself included, there's always human error when you're working with, people. And so things happen once in a while, but you just have to realize that the benefits far exceed, those things that might come down the road, happen along the way. But yeah, definitely, if you can offload as much of the stuff that you can offload that you don't need to be doing yourself, you don't need to be present to do, like administrative stuff, computer data input, whatever it may be. You can skyrocket your business, like Natalia was just talking about, with that person that she just, referenced, the example she used. I mean, you can really, catapult your business by just getting rid of some of those other tasks that you don't need to be the one doing.
Yeah, I think when people finally do get comfortable, and it's never just an easy process where you just say, oh, I'm going to do this. You have to ease into it. And then once it happens and then you see the results, you're like, oh, why didn't I do this 5 years ago, a year ago, whatever it may be. So no, it's interesting just to hear everybody else's perspective. And then Sarah, going back to you, I mean, obviously the value that you provide to, whether it's an agent, a broker owner, whoever it may be, just in terms of the amount of work you take off of their plate. Is there a specific size that you see, whether it's from a brokerage perspective or an agent perspective, a certain amount of revenue that an agent's generating, a certain amount of deals they're closing, and then taking that up a level to the brokerage level? Is there a certain agent count or transaction number where it makes sense to outsource that TC function, or does it make sense to do it right from the beginning?
So for me, I like to have the feel that the ball kind of stops with me. Who I have on the back end, I'd like to keep separate from who my agents are having to work with and things like that. So my admins and things like that, they stay on the background, but I absolutely have people. There are things when you're working several deals at the same time, there are so many things that come in throughout the day. I think that I get a report, and I think that I get around 275 emails, and I think it was like every couple of hours. So yeah. So, it was something like 59,000 a year or so. It's insane. So I do have to have people do things for me, but I don't like to put that on to any of my clients. They talk to me when they call. And, if I ever have to leave the office for any amount of time, then I always do have people that are able to take up the slack. However, I'm new at this whole getting more TCs under OC transaction coordinators. And so I've been introducing that transaction coordinator to some of my agents now. And I don't personally have any requirements when it comes to an agent coming to me and needing help. If they do 1 transaction a month or if they do 30, it doesn't matter to me. I'm willing to take them on. And in fact, I think some of the people that don't do as many transactions may need the transaction coordinator even more, because they don't know what new forms are out there. Maybe they haven't done one in a while or something like that. So I don't have, and I know some TCs do that because it's what makes sense for them. But yeah, I just don't have that requirement, but I always have people on hand that can help me. And I do this full time. I am certified through CAR as a TC, and I'm part of groups that, we keep our continuing education going. That's just something that I do on my own and make my TCs and admins do. We have little meetings about new forms and things like that are going on, which happens all the time in California. But yeah, so I just think that no matter what your volume is, you can always have a little bit of help. That way, nothing ever falls through the cracks, because there's so many elements to a transaction and they're always so different. I've done this for a long time, and I don't think ever 2 transactions have been the same. So, there's always something that you can have someone help you with, so that, this doesn't look, so that it always looks well refined, and so that things are always getting done. And we kind of all have our position and we know what we're doing, so that, we're kind of experts in our areas. And so things always, are seamless. Well, at least we hope they are.
Yeah, well, you both touched on it, which was the fact that having a TC like yourself that's on top of everything, you're up to date on top of, is there a new disclosure or any updates to all these numerous forms that is probably not at the top of your priority list if you're sitting in Deborah's seat and you've got a lot of other things trying to get back to clients and win new listings. That's you're not opening up your inbox to say, oh, there's a new disclosure form we have to put into our transaction, our closing box.
And when do I need this one and when don't I need it? Yeah, that's not something that they have time for. So we understand that, and we definitely try to stay on top of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example of something that doesn't immediately jump out at you when you think of a transaction coordinator. It's just, oh, they're gonna save me time because they're gonna wrangle all the papers and push the process through. But you forget about the things like that, which are also a huge time saver as well. So, and then I guess this one will go to Deborah. Do you offer, beyond yourself, any admin support to your agents, or do you give them guidance in terms of allowing them to, hire their own admins? And if so, kind of guide them and say, hey, this was the process I took. This is what I had offloaded to my admin, and this made me a lot more productive.
So when I was managing a large office, I talked about that a lot to the agents. Now that I'm doing my own brokerage, full disclosure, never wanted agents underneath my brokerage license. There's a lot of liability there. And yep. I said to myself, I'm, doing this just for me and my clients. I'm not really going to have agents. Well, then next thing I knew, a couple of the agents that I had hired at Global Banker were wanting to come over and hang their license with me. And I knew who trained them. So I was okay with them coming my license because I had been the one to train them. So I have just a few agents underneath me. Or underneath my license, and only 2 do a little bit of business, but only 1 has recently started doing more business. And I introduced him immediately to Sarah, and I said, you're going to use Sarah. It kind of was a non-negotiable, and because the other part of this whole equation is risk management, right? So when I was managing those offices, I had to review every single file and every single contract. And so with Sarah and now implementing propane in my business, I'm hopeful that will help with the risk management side of things too. But yeah, for me, with my agents, the admin thing, that's kind of, I feel like a personal preference thing. If they feel like they're busy enough that their business warrants that. But certainly I'll talk to them about that if they, ask questions about that, but non-negotiable transaction coordinator.
Got
for
it.
sure.
And then going back a few steps, how did you find such a wonderful resource like Sarah?
I think I was just Google, because I certainly know a lot of TCs, but and have used a lot of TCs, but one reason or the other, whether there was just because I'm all for everybody making mistakes once in a while, but sometimes if there's too many in a row, I just feel like it might be time to look somewhere else. So I think I just Googled. Did somebody I can't remember, Sarah. Did somebody refer me to you, or did I?
No, I think you found me online. I think
Yeah.
that's what you said. Yeah.
Yeah. Gratefully. Yeah. Best thing I ever found online. Thank you, Google.
And Sarah, how do you look for TCs? You said that you're expanding your team, hiring more TCs. So how are you looking for them? And are you also hiring across borders?
So the one good thing I guess that the pandemic has brought is people are at home. And so I thought, as I got so busy, I think I read somewhere that in one part of California that from last year, it's up like 29%. So, I definitely was feeling the effects of that this summer, and then it didn't slow down. And I just noticed that there were so many people at home that weren't able to work, but needed to work. And so my ideal person is someone who, has had some experience working in the past in a corporate environment, maybe, but that would be able to, or would like to work from home, and also needs to. That's kind of one of my requirements, is that they need to, because they're longer lasting that way. So for me, I've been lucky to have been introduced to some people that other people have thought would be good candidates for me. It turns out that Rachel really fit that. She's amazing. She has a bachelor's degree. She's, has tons of experience in a lot of things, and she's catching on really quickly. And so that's kind of how I've been doing that. Now, as far as, so I'm really working on kind of a training process that's hands off for me to train the TCs, because it's hard for me to do that, especially from a virtual standpoint, and while I'm busy. So once I do that, then, it can be any number of places. It just so happens Rachel's my neighbor. So if I do need to see her in person.
Not the doors when you're looking for that. Not the doors in the neighborhood.
Yeah. So I know where she's at all times. I know if she's working. But so I've been really lucky with that. But yeah, I absolutely have an interest in being everywhere in all 50 states, because I don't want to just be in California. There are some states that it would be a little more difficult to be a TC, and I don't probably see myself going there, but I absolutely want to see myself going nationwide when I can, and then overseas if possible, because I think that you really limit yourself if you don't think that way. I mean, there's transactions everywhere to be done. There's real estate everywhere, and I mean, who doesn't want to be a part of that?
What I meant is, are you looking for affordable work power in other countries? Let's say we have a team in Bulgaria, Eastern Europe. They're fantastic, great English, educated, very knowledgeable experts in software and admin and variety of things. We have transaction coordinators serving agents that live in Asia. Yeah, so I just wonder if you've ever tried to hire people abroad.
I haven't, but definitely open to it. It's something that I've had people say, you can get some of the best, and very reasonable, rates and stuff. So I've definitely thought about it. I just think it's more on my side that I need to get it together and see what it is that I would have everyone do. And that's always intimidating for the person hiring. That person is, what am I going to have them do? How am I going to train them? So those are some of the things for me that it was so important for me to get a software that was, I was able to duplicate that training easily without having to go through some, crazy process. Like when I first started being a transaction coordinator, my process was kind of, just a bunch of Mod Podge things all mixed together. And this is how I did it. So having something where they can just learn the platform, and that's the process. It's made me a lot more comfortable to start thinking about things like you're mentioning, where I would hire someone else that I would be able to train and not feel that, they'd be like, what are you talking about? So
I'm glad you mentioned software, of course, because you're using Profit. And I think that's where the core of our platform is, actually to make a safe environment where all participants can collaborate on one transaction. So first, the platform was built for the consumer, the buyer and the seller, so that they can understand the transaction. Then we identified the core value for the agent, because agent is the one who introduces the transaction to the consumer. So it should be very user-friendly, mobile-friendly transaction. And then obviously, because transaction coordinators are those who are running the transaction on back end, it should be very understandable and efficient for people like your team, Sarah. So that's kind of the things that you can see in our software when you log in and do a transaction. But I want to ask you, do you know that we use blockchain on backend? And what's your opinion on blockchain, if you have any?
So it's funny because there, it's kind of like the cloud. It's like, what is blockchain? I don't know. But what I'm able to say about it is that I know that I don't have limits on my storage, and I don't have, everything is safe and it's encrypted, and it's, and that's what I know about it. And that's what I like about it. When I tell an agent, like my Wi-Fi was hacked recently. I don't know why they thought I'm not that interesting, but I definitely, my personal home Wi-Fi was hacked, and that's where I'm working from. Everything that I had for all of my transactions was completely safe. That's so I do know that you guys are using it, and I know something about, like, there's Bitcoin to be earned, and you guys have your own coin, and so I've looked into it, and I do invest in Bitcoin, especially lately. But yeah, so it's kind of one of those elusive things where you're like, yeah, blockchain. I totally use that, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, you can definitely say you use blockchain, like in early days of internet, like I'm on internet.
Yeah. What does that mean? I don't know. Ask Profit.
Awesome. Love it. Deborah, do you have anything to add?
No, I just remember when Sarah told me that, I was like, okay, what is that again?
I had you, didn't I?
Yeah, well, basically it provides an immutable record for every single transaction and for every single step in the transaction. It's a log, a number of logs in the transaction that cannot be altered. We can add more logs, but it's immutable. We can never delete anything in the past transaction. And yes, we also have a token involved in every single transaction on the back end. It's called PROC tokens. And Sarah, I'm so glad to hear that you're investing in Bitcoin.
Me too.
Some people think it's too late. It's like with TCs, it's never too late. If you're not there yet, hire a TC and invest in Bitcoin, at least little. $10, $100, but it's something that provides you at least an education. And many home buyers and sellers are actually aware of Bitcoin, and often they ask agents, can I sell in Bitcoin, sell my property so that I receive Bitcoin to get some exposure? And an agent, it would be great if an agent can articulate it in an educated manner. Fantastic. So we will be wrapping up soon, and I'd love to ask, how do you see the future of real estate if we kind of imagine in 3-5 years? And definitely you're so experienced in the space, and now you're utilizing such a cutting edge technology. How do you see the future?
So you were asking me? Yeah. So it's always very, the future with real estate is always kind of unknown. You know, right now we're in this kind of bubble and it's so great. And so the way that I see it is that I'm trying to make sure that I have enough diversity to keep it going when this ultimately does the down thing that it does. And, you know, it'll always go back up. But, you know, so I plan for that with, you know, going to other states. And I think that even planning for seasons, I mean, when you're in California, there's ups and downs and, you know, but if you go to say Palm Springs in the winter, you know, there's always going to be action there. So I think I see the same ups and downs that we've always had, but I think that I see things like blockchain and things like Bitcoin, because it's been in the news so much lately and people are starting to really hear about it. I mean, I've known about it for a long time and we were actually investing in it for quite some time, but some people, they're just hearing about it for the first time. And I think that this, I always tell everybody, this is kind of where it's at. A software that you can have that's going to create more productivity for you and less errors and doing it automated. That's the future. But I also know that there is never not going to be a place for the agent. At least that's my opinion, because I think that when you're buying something like a house, it's a big deal for people. And I think that there's always going to be room for that human element there. And so I just want to be able to, you know, serve as many of those as possible without ever having to say no. So that's where I think software like this comes in, you know, something that's going to, you know, bring in other things, you know, not reinvent the wheel necessarily, but bring in those things and automate. To me, that's, I just think going to be the end all be all for TCs is being able to do it without human error as little as possible. That's what I see.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Deborah, how about you?
I agree with Sarah on every front. I think that, you know, 26 years ago when I first got in this business, it was a very different business and it'll continue to evolve. I mean, we have so many quote unquote disruptors, a lot of iBuyers now. I think we have like 20 to 25 iBuyers out there nowadays. But I think there's staying power for the agents that are staying up to speed with, you know, the tools, the processes, technology. And I agree with Sarah 100% with, I think there's always going to be, well, I think there will always be a need for the human element of it. I mean, you know, there's a time and a place for those, you know, those folks that want to just sell it on Zillow to, you know, where everything's just automated. Maybe they, you know, they were left their grandmother's house who passed away or something. They just want to get rid of it. They don't care about getting the highest, you know, the highest price, or, you know, they caring about it going to a great family that's going to, you know, really appreciate it and make many memories in it for a lifetime. You know, they don't, if they don't care about that stuff, there's a time and a place for, you know, for everything that's coming out nowadays. But there's staying power for the agents that are staying on top of things and are able to, you know, adapt and pivot where needed. And, you know, there's a lot of agents that have fallen by the wayside in the last 26 years, but I can't imagine being anywhere else myself. So, and I'm still very grateful and fortunate to be an active agent. So yeah, I think I'm excited to, again, implement Propy. I can't say it enough. I'm just, you know, tools like that really help me stay in the game, you know, seriously.
So we now have a question from the audience from Dan Guerrero, and I guess I'd love to get a response from both of you. We'll start with Deborah. So his question was, how can we help legacy brokers to cross the fence now before the spring market begins, rather than improvise when they're overwhelmed when things pick up? And in terms of implementing technology or hiring a TC, I guess sort of having a plan in place instead of, you know, identifying the need early on, going through the evaluation process and implementing it while you have some downtime, instead of scrambling when you're completely inundated and don't have time.
So by legacy brokers, I wonder if Dan means like the big brands. Is that what he means by the legacy brokers?
Let's go with that interpretation.
So having been a part of one of the big brands, I can tell you that it's a challenge for, because it's a corporate thing, right? And so change doesn't take place as quickly as when you're just now on just an independent broker, and I can pivot and adapt at a moment's notice if I want to. So it's definitely a challenge from my experience, but you know, I think it depends on who's kind of at the top of the food chain at the brokerages as to how soon they can implement those kind of changes. I don't know if I'm really answering Dan's question very well.
No, I mean, that's helpful. It's like you said, it's like trying to turn a cruise ship. It's not a quick process.
Yeah, and you know, I do have to say, and again, I'm speaking from my California market here, I noticed in the last probably, I don't know, 18 months or so to 24 months, you see a lot of independent brokerage signs out there now, way more so than ever in the past. I mean, it used to be, you know, most people wanted to be with one of the big brokerages, and there was a lot of benefits to being with the big brokerages, but you know, I think that's changing too. I think I see a lot of little independent brokerages popping up here in the last 18 months to 2 years. And so I think that's a sign of the times too.
Yeah, that's definitely consumer behavior when in the past it was important to have a brand that you can trust to because of reputation and everything. Now the consumer actually trusts young companies. They trust those that are tech driven, that are open, they're transparent, they have their social media accounts with everything what's going on with their team, with their product. So consumer seems to be trusting the person that they're connected on social media rather than a legacy brand as a broker. Great point. Sarah, how about you?
So I think that the best thing to do is the great thing about a TC and independent TC is that you can hire them now and you don't have to use them until later. So you can do interviewing of TCs, you can talk to several and find the right team for yourself. And a TC is going to be there. You know, I've had several call me and they'll say, when I get a deal, you know, I'm absolutely going to use you. And there's nothing that you need to do in between the time that you talk to them and the time that you actually need them for a transaction. We jump in when it's time. So if you're not busy enough, but you know that, you know, things are heading in that direction, you can start to interview TCs to make sure that you guys are on the same page and that, you know, you get to know each other and the transaction. And then when you need that person to jump in, they're there. I think that's the best way you can be prepared for that influx when it comes in so that you're not overwhelmed and then you're searching for that TC and then you find out they may not be the right fit or something. So
that's a good point. It's like with startup as well, always be hiring, which means like whenever you're talking to a person, maybe you don't need this senior person or such an expert, but you kind of mapping out the future of the people you may want to hire to get prepared for the next phase of your business. Mm-hmm. And Sarah, what are the 3 questions you recommend agents to ask when they interview TCs?
So the number one thing is, do you do this full time? Because if your TC doesn't do this full time, they may not be there when you need them. It's really important that they're there and they do this all day and that, you know, even outside of normal work hours, as a TC, you've got to be there. I think also, you know, the general question of what are the things that you do and what are some things that you know, expect me to do. So expectation setting, of course, is pretty huge. And then of course, I think it's important to make sure that you're in the same place when it comes to processes. So I use Proppy on my end, but sometimes that's not something that I ever let the agent know. And sometimes it is. So, you know, ask them what they use. And if they're going to need to learn that, because, you know, if you're an agent and you're busy and you're going to need to learn a new software, that's something you might want to do ahead of time so that you're not trying to fumble through that later on. So I think that's really important to know what you're getting yourself into when you start a transaction, because you don't want to have that play out in front of your clients or in front of the entire team of people that's involved in an opening an escrow. If you don't look like you know what you're doing, it's going to be apparent. Just even in email responses, you're gonna see that. So
yeah. So interviewing TCs. First question: are you doing it full time? Second question: what are your tools?
Just what are maybe the expectations of both sides? I think, yeah.
what are the expectations in terms of
What do you do? What do I do?
what do you do? Like go through the process,
Yes.
right? Explain
Yeah.
the process.
Mhm.
Yeah. Deborah, we're wrapping up. So what are your 3 recommendations on when a broker owner or an agent wants to hire, whether it's a virtual assistant or a transaction coordinators? What are the 3 tips you have for such people?
I think, well, I think it's good from the get-go to start working with a TC. I think Sarah mentioned it before, but even if you're not a busy agent, even if you've not done a transaction before, I think that is, like Sarah alluded to or said, that is really important. It's especially important because you may not be up to speed on all the contracts. And there's, again, a lot of liability in our business, and just to, know that you've got a peace of mind that somebody's got your back and going to keep your assets out of water, out of hot water. That's really important. So starting with the TC as soon as possible, sooner than later, maybe from the very first transaction you ever do. And then the assistant thing, again, getting back to that, I think that's important once you maybe get to a certain level where you, you should be out in the field, and you can offload some of that administrative type work onto, somebody that you can pay either as a virtual assistant or a physical person that's sitting next to you in the office, whatever it may be. And then I guess the third tip is just really try to stay on top of, as far as education, stay on top of your local, be a part of your local association and attend those trainings that they offer. Because first of all, you're paying for it. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to get much benefit from that if it's a free thing. Well, it's not really free when you're paying your association dues. You get, our association provides free legal, free. It's in your dues. So utilize it, take advantage of it, and just stay educated and on top of things, because not only with that stuff, but also just with your local market, because it's really important to, and it translates, comes across to your client if you are on top of things and know what's going on in your local market, or you don't. And that's how you build trust, and that's how you're going to have staying power and repeat business, referral business. So it kind of all starts with just staying on top of your education and on top of your local market.
Definitely. Love it. So to wrap up, I think that the first advice is definitely get a TC for sure. Find a transaction coordinator to help run your business. Then ask those questions that Sarah mentioned. And Deborah, your view on whether it's a licensed agent or not, that could be also helpful. How do you feel about the TC? What are they doing besides whether it's a full-time engagement or they're doing something on the side? Other questions I think could be around how this person is really detailed oriented, because that's their job. Do they actually enjoy such a work where they have to be so detailed oriented? Do they love the industry? Are they participating in all those industry panels and webinars to be updated? When it comes to hiring an admin or a TC abroad, one of the questions that comes to my mind is definitely the level of English. In that case, it's important not only to have an interview by email, but also a video interview to understand the level of proficiency of the language. That's very critical. It has been critical in our team as well. And of course, the culture fit. I think it's quite an important thing that the person you're hiring, even if it's a part-time, it definitely should be a fit, right? Because you will be working as a team on such important transactions as real estate, because once again, that's one of the most valuable assets one person is acquiring in their life. So we do have to make this work with passion and with a great culture. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, Deborah, and William. That was a fantastic discussion. Bye-bye, everyone. We'll switch off from the live, from our social media. Reach out to Sarah and Deborah. We'll make a blog post with their contact so that you can reach out to them. They're all tagged on our social media. definitely reach out to them to learn more. And for the rest of us, we'll stay online with Veli to make a product update. So thank you and bye-bye.